Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues here and around Europe, you're all very welcome to this very special event coming to you live from University College Dublin here in Ireland. My name is Jonathan McRae. I'm a science broadcaster from Ireland's News Talk, and I'm delighted to be your Master of Ceremonies for this evening's Una Europa Talk, Rewriting the Script at European Universities, Alliances and the Future of Higher Education. This talk kicks off the Una Europa General Assembly, 3 days of community conversation dedicated to building the university of the future. And we'll be seeking to answer the question, what is the story? This is a quintessential Dublin question that evokes Ireland's long and rich tradition of storytelling, a tradition UCD has brought to the very core of its mission as a university. Tonight we're joined by a panel of very special guests who guide us through what it means for Europe to have these extraordinary universities, alliances, and talk about where we're going. And in particular, we're going to talk about European cooperation and the impact of higher education, both now and into the future. So Una Europa was one of the first alliances to receive European funding in now one of 50 alliances across Europe, consisting of over 430 institutions, and there is an ambition to raise that to 60 alliances over 500 institutions. So the movement has gained serious momentum in this short space of time. And it dovetails really nicely, actually, with Ireland's journey in higher education. We've been cooperating and engaging with Europe through education for centuries, but the past 50 years have seen that cooperation evolve to become one of this country's most intense and valuable bonds with our neighbours. And since Ireland has joined the European Union in 1973, we've witnessed a huge leap in our collaborations across teaching, research, mobility, and higher education. Institutions they've joined an alliance now that are designing new ways to continue that collaboration. So I'm very excited to start this our discussion this evening. I'm joined by Professor Orla, she's UCD President, Professor Peter Lievens, he's Vice Rector of International Policy, Interculturality and Alumni Policy at KU Leuven, and Una Futura Project Coordinator, he is as well. And Ms. Patricia Reilly, she's Head of Cabinet for the EU Commissioner at Mairéad, McGuinness. So you're all very welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on a lovely evening. We've got lots of a great program ahead of us, but maybe we might first start off, Orla and Peter and Patricia, by introducing yourselves. So Orla.
I'll start off, as you said, Jonathan. I'm President here in University College Dublin. This is the 1st of May, so relatively new President. And it's a great honour and privilege to welcome so many of you to our wonderful campus here in UCD. Thanks all for joining us here, those of you who are here in the hall, and welcome to those joining us online.
Peter?
Thank you very much, Orla. It really is a pleasure being here. It's actually my first visit to UCD, not the first visit to Dublin. But it's really a joy to be here again at this General Assembly. I have been Vice Rector in these positions for now 6.5 years, and before that I was Dean of the Faculty of Science. International collaboration has really been in my heart as a researcher, but also in many international educational projects, and the opportunity that Una Europa gave us 5-6 years ago is really tremendous. So happy to be here and to talk about Una Europa.
Patricia.
Thank you, and I'd like to reiterate the thanks for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm based in Brussels. I currently work in financial services, financial stability, and capital markets union. However, I have a history of working in European Commission cabinets which span the foundation of the European alliances, university alliances, and also the generation of the Horizon 2020 programme. So I'm very attached to both research and innovation, and I have the added pleasure this evening of being in my alma mater, which I'm very proud of, and I'm sitting, the first time I sat in this hall was when I was graduating, and this hall was brand new then. So it's a real honour to be back.
Thanks, Patricia. So, Orla, let's start with you. You are hosting, after all. As President of Ireland's largest university, tell us what this collaboration means for UCD.
This collaboration is very important and valuable to us in UCD. We didn't join Una Europa in the first tranche. We didn't join until last year. So we were more I suppose we got the opportunity as a consequence to survey the emerging landscape, to see what networks, what alliances were emerging, to see, frankly, which one looked the best.
Very good.
And obviously we came to Europe.
Playing the audience.
Yes, yeah. And for us, we are a deeply European university, a very global university, a university that believes that to make a difference in the world the way that we want to, you can only do that by working with great partners who share your values, who share your ambition, and that is what we saw in this University Alliance.
Give us a big picture of the transformation that we've seen over in Irish education in the past 50 years, because, I mean, it's night and day, isn't it?
Oh, Irish education has been absolutely transformed over the past, so it's the 50th anniversary this year of Ireland's joining the European Union, and our entire country has been transformed in every conceivable way, economically, socially, culturally, in terms of, you know, people's outlook, the way we look at the world, the way we look at ourselves. All of these have been completely transformed through our membership of the European Union. So we are deeply attached in Ireland to that European ideal, very proud to be Europeans in terms of higher education, our ambition. So the Erasmus programme, for example, has, you know, been adopted with such enthusiasm by Irish students, and it's just become such an integral part of our higher education experience. Research, you know, 50 years ago, there was no research funding to speak of in Ireland. We were nowhere compared to many of the countries that are represented in Una Europa. And when I was a student in UCD in the 1980s, the professors who were most ambitious and most, you know, excited about sourcing research funding, it was to Europe that they looked.
Yeah.
And it was there that they sourced funding, built their networks, set the level of ambition. So it is that European connectedness that transformed our higher education, transformed our student experience, transformed our research environment in Ireland, as well as transforming our country in so many ways.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe it's a little bit longer than 50 years ago, but we were, you know, an agricultural nation, and now we're a country known for the knowledge economy.
Exactly.
And that happened in such a short space of time.
Yeah.
How important is this for UCD, though? Because UCD obviously plays an important role as one of Ireland's leading universities and Ireland's biggest university. What's the role of UCD?
The role in Una Europa, or more generally, or just our general ambitions?
In the transformation of Irish education.
I have argued, and nobody has yet contradicted me. I hope you won't be the first. If you look at...
Not on stage, anyway.
Yeah. If you look at Ireland's transformation, our industrial transformation, our social transformation, cultural transformation, I would argue that no one institution has had more impact on that transition than University College Dublin. The scale of our university for the scale of this country is enormous. The number of our graduates, the number of our alumni who have fanned out all around this country, all around the world, the impact of our graduates has been extraordinary. And if you look at every part of Irish life, since independence 100 years ago, since about the 50 years where we started our economic and so on transition, you will see UCD writ large over every part of it. There was an article last week about Irish judges, the judiciary, where they've come from. 70% of them since independence have come from UCD.
Yeah.
When I was a student, an engineering student in UCD, at that point, 70% of the engineers in the country were from UCD. So this university has impacted, and you look at culture, somebody like Donal Lunny, you know, our musician in residence, you look at the impact of this university over every part of Irish life, it has been extraordinary, and that's one of many reasons why it's such an honour for me to lead this university.
And I cannot argue with any of those points.
Thank you.
Nor would I. Tell me, Peter, about Una Europa, because this concept of the university of the future, what exactly does it mean?
Yeah, what does it mean? There are so many definitions possible. I think what is strong about the University of the Future is the journey, the space that we are creating for doing much more than we can do in traditional bilateral or trilateral collaborations that we have known for many, many years, and also much more than what we can do in larger networks of universities. If you think about what has been possible now in a few years of time, with all the initiatives that the academic community, the community of professional staff have set up, it really is transformational. We have tried things that nobody ever dared to do before. And we also have engaged many parts of the different universities and activities that were kind of unthinkable before. So we are connecting disciplines. We are not only within university trying to have academics from different disciplines collaborating, but also do this internationally on a larger scale. And at the same time, we are creating opportunities for solving challenges that the world is being confronted with. So, talking about transformation of higher education in Ireland, I think that what we are doing now is really transforming higher education at the level of Europe. For me, it also is, if you think about education and also research, but to a different extent, what we are trying to do now is really complete the ambitions that the Bologna process has been put forward many years ago. Many issues that were put on the table there to be solved in a couple of years are still not solved. And we are working on that now, bottom up, top down, with lots of combinations of efforts, not only actually within Una Europa, but also in other European alliances.
The benefits of this alliance, Peter, from your position, what are they?
There's so many. I think, well, if you have 11 universities like this joining forces, there's lots of creativity. You feel this buzz whenever you have all these groups meeting every half year in the General Assemblies and on all the meetings that go along with that. Maybe I can just give one example. Within Una Europa, early on we decided to come up with a seed funding instrument where we wanted academics to join forces across universities of the university. The more universities you involve, the more funding you get, so that's an incentive. And there was a group taking the initiative to come up with a consortium of the then 8 member universities to come together on the topic of One Health, which later on became very timely with the pandemic and so on. So for KU Leuven, this really was an opportunity because we did not really have a community gathering together within the university on One Health. They joined forces with the colleagues of that group, learned a lot on how things were organized at other universities, and now it is a recently established KU Leuven Institute on One Health, which is now flourishing and really creating something new. So it's just one of the many examples that we can think of. Another example is the initiative that we took to create a joint bachelor on European studies. European studies was very important. Yeah. I mean, European values was very important when the initiative was taken by the European Commission. And we thought, why not engaging young students as of their first year at university to study at different universities, combining different disciplines. It's a very interdisciplinary program, but also going to different universities with embedded mobility in the program. Some people in faculties and departments were a bit skeptical. They thought this is going to be a lot of effort for just a few students. But as of the first year, we had 400 candidates. We now have, 550 students studying already in this program. And it's only 1 year and a couple of months old. So just 2 examples of how you really leverage new ideas, new ambitions by bringing bright minds together.
You know, I do a science program at News Talk, and often I'm looking at future technologies, and people always ask me, you know, how will this area be transformed, or what will happen in this area? And with education, you know, the question always goes down to AI and the future of technology, but actually hearing about the alliances and the vision for what these will do, it's really, really exciting. And you know, as a father to young boys who are love academia, I'm really excited for them for this future. Patricia, you've sort of been involved in these from the very beginning in a way. Tell me about, you know, the ambition of this project and where it started, and whether or not, while working on it, you thought it was doable. Because let's be honest, you know, European institutions are not known for necessarily the most rapid mobility, but it seems like a real success story.
Yeah, I mean, it stemmed from a couple of things. Around 2017, as I recall, President Macron made a speech about having a vision for European universities. And like all good ideas, they're best when somebody else steals them and makes them into their own, which my boss did. So Tibor Navracsic at the time decided to make it happen. There was a lot of skepticism, I think it would be fair to say, both within our own institution, if I'm truthful, but I think also within the academic community, you know, what are these going to do? And sensible universities like UCD stood back and waited a little while to see how it was all going to pan out. But we did manage to persuade the people because member states decide how their money is spent. So, you know, it wasn't just the Commission making something up. We made it up, but we needed to get support for funding it. And we persuaded the member states that we would, you know, do a pilot, 6 alliances to start out with a modest amount of money. And the amount of interest when we issued the first call for expressions of interest was extraordinary. So we ended up with 17 alliances in that first tranche. And really the ambition has built ever since. But the original vision was exactly as Peter has said. It was about embracing European values, not making everybody the same, but embracing difference. It was about excellence, always excellence in both education and research, and it was about inclusion. We were very keen that it would not be just a club of elites, but a club of like-minded people who would look at the big problems that society is facing, and my God, we have lots of them. So, you know, the green and digital transformations are obvious candidates for development at a transnational, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary level. So there's a lot of ambition around that for the alliances. In terms of the future, I think the future is huge. I think this is a really big area for education in Europe. There's 1.1 billion euro going to go into the European alliances between 2021 and 27. So that's a lot of money, and I think it'll be sustained into the future.
Ireland, being an island with no land bridge to the rest of Europe, we are the poorest nation in Europe when it comes to the European experience. That would be my feelings. I had the chance to live in France for a year, about 3 years ago, and it was so nice. It was so nice to be somewhere. I could get in a train, I could go to Italy, or I could go to Switzerland. And so this is something that Irish universities, I'm sure, are grabbing with both hands, or this opportunity to give a European experience to their students. But obviously, we do need to make adjustments. We do need to remove barriers, and we need to make things easy to allow that collaboration to happen. What do we need to do in terms of next steps? What sort of things do we need to do to make that collaboration easier?
And it's exactly that, because we can all agree, we can all subscribe to the overall vision. So look, that's easy, but it's a question of making things practical. So if we want students to experience an educational experience that is genuinely European, that is genuinely trans-institutional, there are, you know, legal, regulatory, compliance, you know, barriers there, but some of them self-imposed, some of them that we need to look at maybe nationally to think what needs to be addressed here to give our students this seamless experience that we would all deeply love to give them as part of this alliance. So that is where I think a lot of the work at a General Assembly such as this one goes in, bringing people together to identify what is the vision here, what are the actions that flow from that, what are the barriers to delivering success, and how can we tackle them one by one so that we move along a journey towards realising our shared vision.
Peter, what would your thoughts be on the biggest barriers? What are the things that we need to do to change?
Yeah, it depends where you would like to start. I think one of the, if you think about the joint degrees I was talking about, so this is really problematic. And the reason is that we all adhere in member states very much to our own traditions in higher education. Education in general, we have invented our own framework, and over the years, over the decades even, we have started to harmonize bits and pieces of the higher education area, but not everything, by far not everything. A couple of examples. Tuition fees are tremendously different in different universities, and this is because the funding model, the business model of universities is completely different, also within Europe. So one country has stringent rules on having a minimum tuition fee, others do not allow any tuition fee. And that is then only for the European students. There are also different regulations for non-European students. Another one is admission, open intake or highly selective. Also that is something to think about. And I can go on. There are a couple of other hurdles, and all of them have to do with the fact that we all have come up, I think, with excellent legislations on how to organize higher education, and rightly so. I think we needed to do that. But what we now need for these type of strong, intense, transformative collaborations between universities is to either agree on common legislations or even transfer some of the higher education to the competence of the European Union. It's something that is probably not easy to realize, but we have done that for research. So why not for international programs, for international collaboration and higher education? And I'm also looking to two of the members which are not belonging to the European Union, our Swiss and UK colleagues. Yes, they're sitting there just next to each other, surrounded by Europeans, in between the French and the Polish, so it could not be better. But also there, I think we should be open to also allow interactions as universities of the European Union with universities beyond, not only within Europe, but also beyond Europe. So that, I think, is really would be a significant step forward.
Absolutely, and there is so much collaboration already with those countries. And when Europe left Horizon, I think it wasn't. No one was very happy about that. And it's great to see them back again in that European funding pot.
Now Switzerland is to follow, of course.
Yes, yes. Patricia, talk to me a little bit about that. You said there was a little bit of criticism and challenges. Like, from your point of view, having been part of the vision, what were the biggest hurdles that you had in your mind when you were working with your colleagues on putting something like this together? Like, what are the biggest challenges that you see? Are they legislative? Are they to do with having the right quality standards across universities? Are they freedom of people? What is the freedom of movement? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of all of those things, I suppose. I mean, the first thing I'd say, and just building on what Peter said, the European Union doesn't legislate in the area of education. Every member state has its own autonomous education system, and that's how it has evolved. And for many reasons, that's the right way for education to be governed. But it leads to fragmentation and varying standards and just simple things like semesters not being the same from one university to another, fee structures being different, all of those things. So that's a challenge. I think we're hoping and willing to make progress on that next year. The Commission will come up with a blueprint for a joint degree, joint European degree, which won't tell anybody how to do it, but it will certainly maybe put some guardrails around what would be a good way to progress, and those who wish to progress will do so. The other big challenge, I think, that we faced at the beginning, and it's an ongoing thing, and it speaks to the theme of these few days, is telling the story as to why this is important, both to the outside world and, frankly, to those whose pockets need to finance the whole alliances, but also telling the story to ourselves. You know, those of us who are involved in the alliances, what's the added value? How do we express that? And I think Peter gave a couple of very good examples of practical, tangible deliverables from this ephemeral project that started out as ephemeral and is now very much bedded down. So I think that's a journey, and I think that storytelling is really important. And it's not just about creating, it's obviously about things like creating jobs and the right skills for the right, demands of the market. But it's more than that. It's about culture, and it's about, I loved Donal Lunny's composition inspired by Balkan music. That for me said everything about international European cooperation. And it just came. It came naturally because he's listening as well as talking.
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's huge benefits to students and to be able to travel to continue your studies in a particular degree, but travel to other places and meet and experience different people from different cultures. One thing I hadn't thought about when I was hearing about these alliances was the benefits to staff who also want to develop their careers, experience other countries, teach, work with colleagues in a new discipline and so on. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and there are great benefits, and you can see just from the attendance here today, you can see that people are taking up this opportunity with open arms. So first of all, the students, and it's brilliant to have the student voice very central in this. Martha Mairéad, who's the head of our students' union in UCD, is here and has been very involved in Una Europa, along with other students' unions, and bringing people together from the student population. So not just that the students individually benefit from the European University Alliance, but also that the student voice is really, really strong in forming the Alliance. I think that's really important. And then, as you say, staff, so both our academic staff and our non-academic staff. Our academic staff who get to work with their counterparts in the other institutions to map out a research vision, new methods of education, get to forge new contacts, and then also the non-academic, the professional support staff in our institutions who get to share best practice, who get to travel back and forth, see how things are run in other institutions, learn, share. Again, this is exactly what it's all about. And we know we're different, and we will remain different as institutions, and that's fine. That is part of the strength of the Alliance. We're not all trying to be the same as one another, but to learn from one another, to learn from the best of one another, to share best practice, to build those links. And I think something really special can emerge out of that.
There is, of course, a lot of movement between researchers and scholars at the moment internationally.
Oh, of course, yes.
But is it a tricky thing to do? Is that a difficult thing for if I wanted to move my institution for a year and research somewhere else? Is that a very difficult thing to do at the moment? Is that
not especially, no. And there are tried and tested methods in academia where that can be done.
Right.
And our academics continue to collaborate all around the world, and that will continue to happen. We're not suggesting that research collaboration will be focused in this set of universities, but the fact that there is a wellspring of collaboration there, I think it gives a head start to collaborations within the Alliance. And where opportunities such as Peter described, the One Health opportunity, where those opportunities are identified and can be progressed within the Alliance, it just puts you on a fast track to develop very particular collaborations that can also feed out into education. And again, I was in part of a great discussion earlier about this. One of the things that people commented on that they love about the Alliances, is that many structures are just research, Erasmus or whatever, just research, Horizon. The fact that you've got both of them together in an alliance means that you can benefit from those synergies between research and education in really exciting ways.
Absolutely, and you'd imagine that shared experience, the trodden path between these 11 universities would just make it easier and easier the more those paths are walked.
Yeah.
What about the other alliances, Peter? What is Una Europa doing with those? Are you looking over at their notes, or are you having frank conversations about the best way to continue? Is it collaborative? Is it competitive?
Yeah, we think that they are looking to our notes.
Yeah, very good.
But yes, actually we are doing that. If you think about what the strength is of these alliances with the 11 universities, think about the professional staff that are people gathering now, for instance, in these days, to discuss about their job with colleagues from different countries, different universities. They come up with solutions to interact better and to really make mobility of students easier, joint programs easier. Once they come up with solutions, it's of course very important to also share that with universities and with partners from outside of our Una Europa Alliance. If you think about the large amount of collaborations we all have. I think Leuven is something like 2,000 plus bilateral agreements only for educational collaboration between programs.
Wow.
That's a lot, and we all have that, because it's usually on a program base, exchanging just a couple of students. They all have their particularities. But if we manage to solve that, or to solve all the issues within this alliance, if we come up with good solutions, for instance, to validate credits and that are obtained elsewhere, then it's there to share with all the other alliances. And the nice thing is that we essentially, with all the alliances, move in similar directions but using different options. We make different choices, so we select probably all sustainability and European studies and data science, but then how we interact, what type of courses that we develop, at what level of study is kind of different. So it's also very complementary. And yeah, we organize ourselves, so we have a meeting regularly with the 17 alliances of the first generation, the second generation does that as well. There are also a lot of meetings organized between universities in a member state that are all part of a alliance. So that's also an interesting network to see how we deal with these collaborations. So it's like really an expansion of good ideas, I think, throughout Europe, which is eventually going to change the European higher education area for good.
Yeah,
very transformative.
Absolutely. Patricia, when I heard about the alliance for the first time, my first thought was, oh, this is about getting ERC green lights, right? I was thinking this is, the main reason for this is that universities can work together and they can get their hands on the biggest prize in research, because I'm a science broadcaster, and that's all I was thinking about. Yeah. But this partly, of course, it helps with inter-university collaboration and so on. It was funding these Europe-wide projects part of that vision?
Yes and no. I would say it wasn't primarily what was in our minds, but it was about excellence. So, ultimately, I suppose it shouldn't be any surprise that it will lead to pathways to, to raise the boat for everybody. I think what Peter's just said is really interesting for me, because I haven't been involved down in the weeds of what's happened with the alliances over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's exactly as we'd hoped it would be, which is almost like sandboxes where people are developing ideas, and I didn't realize, for example, that in a member state, universities from different alliances were talking to each other about how best to do things. That's brilliant, and that in itself is just adding to the layers of collaboration that can happen. So, was it envisaged? No, but it's great to see. It's great to see that excellence develop and those networks grow.
Yeah, sometimes it's really fantastic, this interaction. Just to give an example, last week there was a state visit of the King and the Queen of the Belgians to Germany, and we took the initiative together with our colleagues across the language border, Leuven and their alliance, to organize an event in Berlin, joining the 2 alliances that we are part of. And we also opened up this initiative to all the other Flemish and French-speaking universities in Belgium who are also part of an alliance. And we had this great meeting where everybody was exchanging ideas with a focus there on sustainability. So it was also, I think, very, very timely.
Okay, let's look to the future now. And Orla, you as UCD's first woman president, I'm sure that is very much on your mind, what the future looks like. So if we look forward in 10 years, what do you think the future of education? I know it feels like a short amount of time given the things we're talking about. But what does the future of education look like for UCD and for Europe, do you think?
I think it's such an interesting time for the world in so many ways. I mean, there are so many things to be concerned about. We've got war in and next to Europe. We've got threats to democracy. I was at a really interesting talk there last week where a very expert commentator was saying that the period of stable liberal democracies that we've all grown up in and that has seemed to us to be normal since the Second World War, this may, a few years from now, be seen as a blip. You know, that, you know, there are things that, yeah.
Crazy to me. I mean,
Yeah, so there are these dynamics. There's all sorts of dynamics in the way countries look inward or outward. There are huge technological changes with artificial intelligence. There are huge changes to the world in terms of sustainability. So, you know, in one sense, universities are very, very old institutions that have, you know, ridden the wave of many dramatic changes in the world, but we can't take this for granted. And, you know, 10 years is a long time. So, number one, we do need to secure our role in higher education, understand our position, argue for our importance, and this is, and think very strategically and very fundamentally about what higher education is all about. So I think that, you know, at its most fundamental level, we have to be aware that these vast, vast changes are happening in the world, and we cannot take for granted that higher education will retain its current status, you know, its current allegiance. So anyway, so that's at the most basic level. If we're more optimistic.
That's terrifying that that's something you're thinking about.
I think
we need to let people know that higher education is important. But I think you're right.
No, I think at the most fundamental level, we can't take anything for granted. If we are a bit more optimistic, to think of the positive impact that a higher education institution or an alliance of higher education institutions, to think of the positive impact that we can have on the world, to tell that story, to think of the futures that we can support our graduates to carve out. This is, at this time of great change, it is an enormous privilege to be able to, let's say, look to the future with optimism and say, yes, you know, we can make our mark, we can make life so much better for so many generations of graduates and all those who intersect with our university. So let's think about how we can make that real difference to the world and to the lives of our students.
Peter, what does the future of education look like from your position?
I would say international. We have known for many, many years that quality of academic life, in particular research, has always been enhanced by collaborating across borders, not only of disciplines, but also of countries, getting different insights, people with different background joining forces. And I think we have experienced personally, many of us, that also in education you see this quality enhancing factor. And we should create opportunities for everybody to profit from all these international possibilities that there are now. Now, of course, and I do agree, we have to plead for and to work hard to get our educational system in Europe even to higher standards. But I think it's also going to be very important to open up even more to other continents, to invest in collaborating with neighboring continent, Africa, for instance, or Latin America, or Asia, name it. And also there, I think that we as members of an alliance, like Una Europa, can take significant steps forward. One initiative that currently is ongoing is to, well, we have a call out there where colleagues of 8 African partner institutions can apply for a chair in the European university counterparts, but only on the condition if they bring a couple of their young students and postdocs with them, so that we really are creating a very strong partnership in the 6 focus areas that we have defined between the African continent and our European universities. And at the same time, then particularly in sustainability, we now got Erasmus funding for the UNAVEX project, which was highlighted also this morning in the teaching and learning strategy meeting together with the board of directors, where we are going to open up the micro-credential program that in sustainability that we have developed to students from Africa, and of course also from other universities in Europe. So, yeah.
Just add on that, are there things like this outside of Europe, this university alliances? Is that system, does it exist outside of Europe?
Not that I know, but of course, since we have approached 8 African universities who all had bilateral partnerships with the 11 Una Europa universities, they are now kind of acting like an African counterpart of Una Europa. It all dates back to a brilliant idea that Georges Haddad, the former president of Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne, had to build the Una Africa, with whom we could collaborate. And well, it's slowly getting shape, but we do not want to propose, or certainly not impose, a model that we have been piloting in Europe to another continent.
Yeah.
We just would like to see what is beneficial for them, and then we are open, I think, as a European University Alliance, to collaborate with the African universities.
If we look at 10 years from now, I mean, obviously Una Europa is relatively new. It's still figuring out things. There's lots of changes that are required in 10 years' time. Will it be a seamless integration between all of these 11 universities? Easy movement of students and staff? Lots of European funding?
Well, I'm tempted to say yes, but probably reality will be different. I do hope that by that time we have succeeded in scaling up a lot of the initiatives that we are now piloting on a small scale. So I think people who have benefited from our doctoral schools, our MOOCs, our joint bachelor and other initiatives really are profiting from that. But it's still fairly small groups. Of course, there's more mobility that will grow. But all the nice initiatives that colleagues take should really be scaled up to very large groups, very large number of students. And that is an ambition. And at least I do hope that in 10 years from now, all students at our university will know about Una Europa and about all the opportunities that are created through that way. But keeping in mind also that we will not restrict all these brilliant ideas to Una Europa. We will include all the partnerships that we have. And that is then going to create much more opportunities for all students.
I'll ask the same question then to you, Patricia. What does the future of higher education look like in Europe?
I think I see huge opportunities for higher education. I also see huge responsibilities in a positive way. I mean, as Orla alluded to, we're living in such a, perma-crisis almost at the moment, between war in Europe, war on the borders of Europe. We're not long through a pandemic. We have no idea what the next health crisis will be or when it will come. So for me, I mean, the word educate comes from the Latin, and a Latin word that means to lead on. And I think universities are about leadership.
Yeah.
And alliances of universities have a powerful potential as leaders on a global scale, not just at national or European level. So I think, there's such a growing and worrying, though I have to say, at least in Ireland, it's still very small, and I hope it remains small, divisiveness within society, that I think the imagination and the thoughtfulness, and I mean that in the true sense of the word, that can come out of academic reflection and learning from each other has an enormous amount to do in countering that negativity and that divisiveness and bringing us forward as a community that can tackle those big problems. The climate change that we've got, the geopolitical instability that we're facing. And it's not a new concept. I mean, you talked about 50 years ago or longer than 50 years ago, and the end of the war. And this period has been a relatively calm and peaceful one. My father-in-law, who's no longer with us, was an astrophysicist, and during the 60s, like at the height of the Cold War, he was working in both the US with NASA and in Moscow with the Russians. Quite legitimately, by the way. They knew about each other. But the only diplomacy that was going on at the time was scientific and education. Yeah. So I think it has an enormous role in democracy, in the future of democracy.
Yeah, and I, as a proud European who lives in a country that has benefited hugely from the European experience, I really think universities have a huge role in including and I suppose communicating the importance of our dependence on our international neighbours. And let's maybe finish a little bit on that, because my job is training people to communicate. How do we communicate these messages to our audiences? Who needs to hear them? And how do we let them know what we're doing and why it's important?
And first we need to know that ourselves. We need to figure out where are we headed, what is important about what we do. So figure out for ourselves, what are we doing that's of value and where are we headed? Who are the audiences? Who needs to hear it? And as you will know so well, Jonathan, you know your audience, and then you figure out your channels to various audiences and your various messages. So funders, you know, the European Commission and also national funders. So we need funding from both if we are really to realise the potential here. Industries and other partners who might work with us, they need to know about us. Our students need to know about us. Internally, our staff need to know about these networks and the opportunities that they bring. Yeah. So it's that standard communications, quite an algorithmic approach to figure out what are our messages to all these different groups, who do we want to talk to, and then let's get the message out there in a really succinct and powerful way. Yeah.
Peter, I suppose some of that leadership comes from you in terms of messaging from Una Europa. How do you communicate the message of your alliance to the universities and to decision makers?
Yeah, well, communication, we have experts for that. So I really am looking to the plans that they bring forward, and I think we do this by making or trying to convey the message that we have in all the individual actions, to make it accessible and to spread this as much as possible through all the fantastic tools that people come up with. But I think we should probably go further than that. We typically have within universities and certainly within alliances like this, the tendency to talk to people that speak our language, that have had higher education and that can think in a scientific way. And then it's even complicated because not all scientists think alike, and some scientists, or maybe not as much fact-based as we would all, or many of us would assume. But going beyond that, trying to communicate what the job of a scientist, what academics, researchers are finding out, and what the impact of that can be on daily life and should be also in shaping the future. I think we have to really put in more effort to make sure that the messages that are important are being heard by all of our communities and not only the ones that make it into university.
Patricia?
I think I would reiterate some of what Orla suggested, which is, you know, very, very basic stuff, but it's so important. Know your audience, who are you communicating to? I think timing of thoughts that come from a university into policy making is incredibly important. It needs to, you know, policymakers generally are very time poor. So getting the message succinct, but also feeding it into the system at the right time, so not the day before the budget. You know, it needs to be something that people are familiar with. They need to understand the value of what it is you're pitching well in advance of a decision being made. So I think that's important. I also think, you know, sometimes it's understandable because it's very often first and foremost in people's mind is where's the money coming from, where's the funding for the next year, the 5 years, whatever. And of course that's important. So you do need to be able to quantify in financial terms the value of higher education to an extent. So you can do that through how many jobs were created or how many semiconductors were manufactured in a country or whatever. Yeah. But there's the intangible, which I think we need to be better at capturing, which I think we do in Ireland reasonably well through drama, through the arts. But I think we can do more to exploit that, and I mean that in a positive way, because there's just so much of the arts and social sciences that brings us together as a democratic society that transcends financial benefit, but it stabilizes. It creates a stable base for all of that economic growth that we all want.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the things that move people are our emotions, and we get to those emotions from stories. So really understanding what that story is and communicating to audiences, that's where we're going to be successful. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. Please, a warm round of applause for our panel, Professor Reilly, Professor Peter Leuven, and Patricia Reilly. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to you at home for watching, and to everyone here in Dublin. I hope you have a fantastic program over the next 3 days and you have a great time in Dublin. Thank you and good night.